In front of a crowded debate hall with 200 people, an 18-year-old Barron Trump towers over the podium, and in just 18 minutes, he calls Michelle Obama unfit with America. Gasps ripple through the audience. But then, Michelle calmly lifts her phone and plays a secret recording that exposes hidden truths about racism, lies, and betrayal at the highest level, leaving the entire room in shock. Barron's own voice admits he doesn't believe what he says, that it's all just a performance, and that he secretly agrees with Michelle on race, justice, and even criminal reform. People were left stunned, questioning everything they thought they knew about truth and politics. Why would Barron secretly agree with Michelle in private, yet attack her so viciously in public? And what does this reveal about the hidden battles of racism, power, and deception still raging in America today? And it all began that morning on the historic halls of Georgetown University, shimmering under crisp spring sunlight that glints off Gothic spires and stained glass windows. Inside, the debate auditorium hums like a beehive about to swarm. Students clutch overpriced coffee cups, complaining in stage whispers about how a single cappuccino could bankrupt a small nation, while the scent of burnt espresso mingles with the anxious energy rippling through the room. Faculty members mill around in clusters, adjusting ties and pearl necklaces, eyes darting nervously toward the stage, as if expecting a meteor to crash into the podium at any moment. In one corner, Professor Ellen Grant, the poised chair of political science, battles a rebellious microphone that squeals each time she says, "Good evening," prompting a few scattered chuckles from the crowd and a young intern frantically twisting dials on the soundboard. A voiceover cuts through the buzz, lightly mocking, yet filled with promise. Georgetown debates usually draw polite claps, not nationwide chaos. But tonight, the polite claps have left the building. The camera pans to the stage, where two empty chairs sit under blazing lights, each flanked by American flags. The hush grows thicker, as though the room itself is holding its breath. Then, the first of the giants enters. Barron Trump strides onto the stage, towering nearly 6'8", shoulders squared beneath a tailored navy blazer that gleams beneath the spotlights. His blonde hair is combed with military precision, but his eyes flicker with tiny bursts of uncertainty, betraying the war raging beneath his calm exterior. He pauses, surveying the crowd with the regal posture of someone bred for the spotlight, his chin tilted slightly upward, as though measuring the room's loyalty. Yet a single drop of sweat trickles down the side of his face, disappearing into his crisp white collar. And then, Michelle Obama emerges from the opposite wing. At 61, she radiates an unshakable calm, wearing a deep burgundy suit that stands in bold contrast against the cool-toned stage. Her stride is measured, graceful, but there's a coiled power in her every step, as if she carries entire rooms effortlessly on her shoulders. Her eyes scan the audience, softening when she spots familiar faces, but sharpening with quiet resolve as they settle on Barron. There's warmth in her half-smile, the kind of motherly expression that says, "I've seen storms bigger than you, young man." Yet behind that warmth is the razor edge of a brilliant legal mind, honed in courtrooms and the political trenches. The silence in the room becomes charged, almost electric. Hushed whispers dart from row to row, like fireflies on a dark field. "Is Barron going to destroy her?" someone murmurs, leaning into a friend's shoulder. Another voice whispers back, "Michelle's going to eat him alive." Phones are already raised in trembling hands, live streams blinking red, as viewers pour in from around the world, eager to witness history unfold. The atmosphere is no longer that of an academic debate. It feels more like the calm before a thunderstorm, each moment stretching longer than the last, the anticipation pulsing through the room like a second heartbeat. The voiceover returns, smoother, lower now, adding a hint of foreboding. Tonight isn't just a debate. It's a collision of generations, legacies, and hidden truths waiting to explode. And nobody in this room knows just how deep the cracks already run beneath the stage. The lights glow a little hotter as the crowd settles, every eye fixed on Barron Trump, who shifts in his seat and clears his throat, trying to hide the adrenaline buzzing through his veins. Inside his head, though, chaos reigns. Is my hair still perfectly in place? Don't touch it. No, wait. Maybe just a quick pat. He can almost hear his mother's voice warning him not to fuss, while his father's voice barks from the shadows of memory. Hit hard. Make it personal. Never let them see you sweat. Barron tries to steady his breathing, silently reciting the lines he's practiced for weeks, rolling each word over in his mind, like a marble in his palm. Thank you, Dr. Grant. With all due respect. No, too soft. Go bigger. Give them a headline. A flicker of mischief crosses his face as he imagines the moment going viral, his classmates roaring with admiration, and maybe, just maybe, Michelle Obama caught off guard, speechless for once in her life. It's an intoxicating vision, and he can't help a small, secret grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. A hush settles as Dr. Grant gestures toward him, granting him the floor. Barron leans forward, gripping the edge of the podium, feeling the weight of 1,000 cameras zeroing in. He's aware of every microsecond, the faint buzz of the stage lights, the distant tick of a clock somewhere in the auditorium, the faint squeak of someone shifting in a seat. Then he speaks, his voice smooth and confident, each word slicing through the tension like a knife. Michelle Obama, he begins, adding a polite tilt of his chin. With all due respect. His gaze sharpens, blue eyes locking onto hers like laser sights. Your record shows you're completely unfit to guide America's youth in political engagement. For an instant, time freezes. The words hang in the air like shards of glass, caught in a spotlight. A single sharp intake of breath echoes from the back of the hall, followed by a collective gasp, rippling forward in waves, as if a pebble has been dropped into a still pond. A young man in the front row lowers his phone in disbelief, mouth half open. An older woman clutches the armrest of her chair, knuckles whitening. Even Dr. Grant blinks rapidly, her lips parting as though she's about to intervene, but can't quite find the words. The laughter and polite anticipation that filled the room moments before evaporate, leaving a heavy, shocked silence in its place. Barron's chest rises and falls a little quicker now, but he forces himself to stand tall, chin high, maintaining the practiced facade of unflappable confidence. He feels his heart slam against his ribs as he registers the seismic impact of his statement. This wasn't just a policy disagreement. It was an attack on Michelle Obama's integrity, her life's work, her standing as one of America's most respected figures. And for a heartbeat, even he wonders if he's just lit a fuse he can't control. Somewhere in the crowd, a single soft voice whispers, "Did he really just say that?" The voiceover returns in a low, ominous tone. And in that one sentence, Barron Trump didn't just start a debate, he declared war. The air feels heavier as Barron's words echo and fade, like the dying toll of a church bell. All eyes swivel toward Michelle Obama, waiting to see if she'll erupt, recoil, or perhaps unleash a fiery counterattack. But Michelle simply sits there, unruffled, her posture elegant and relaxed, as though she's lounging in a sunlit living room, instead of facing an 18-year-old who just called her unfit on live television. Inside her mind, a wry voice remarks, "Oh, the kid wants to go there." She arches one brow ever so slightly, a gesture that has toppled egos from senators to CEOs, and tilts her head as if she's listening for the punchline to an unfinished joke. She feels the heat of the stage lights on her cheekbones, but remains perfectly still, offering only a small, private smile that flickers at the corners of her mouth. The kind of smile that says, "Honey, I've been through much worse than this." Around them, the audience's heads swing back and forth like spectators at a tennis match. A young woman in the fourth row clutches her friend's arm, whispering, "Michelle's about to destroy him." Another student fumbles to keep his phone steady, determined not to miss a single word of what's coming. Even Dr. Grant seems torn between stepping in and simply letting history unfold. The tension crackles like static electricity, every second stretching out longer than the last. Michelle breathes in deeply, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down around her, but in her chest, there's no fear, only a calm, cool certainty honed over decades in the public eye. She glances at Barron with a look that's equal parts compassion and razor-sharp steel, silently thinking, You're still a kid, and you have no idea the storm you've just called down. Then, she leans forward, folding her hands on the table in front of her, her voice low and even, cutting through the silence like a violin note, slicing the air. Mr. Trump, she begins, each word measured and deliberate. Before you question my fitness, perhaps you should take a good, long look at your own family's record. For a heartbeat, the room is frozen. Then a collective gasp rushes through the audience, as though the entire hall has just remembered how to breathe. Barron's composure flickers, the corner of his mouth twitches, his confident facade momentarily cracked. A flush rises in his neck, creeping toward his ears, betraying the first signs of unease beneath his polished exterior. Michelle doesn't raise her voice or pound the table. She doesn't have to. The weight of her words hangs in the air like a sword, suspended by a single thread. The audience leans in, captivated, sensing that something seismic has shifted. Dr. Grant stares between the two combatants, eyes wide, as though trying to decide whether to intervene or simply let the verbal fireworks continue. Meanwhile, Michelle's gaze never wavers, holding Barron's eyes with an expression that is gentle, yet utterly unyielding. The look of a woman who's faced entire administrations and come out stronger. The voiceover returns, hushed and awed. And in that single sentence, Michelle Obama didn't just defend herself. She turned the entire battlefield around. And for the first time, the young man who had never lost a debate felt the floor start to crumble beneath his feet. For a moment, Barron sits frozen under Michelle's unwavering stare, as though he's been caught sneaking out past curfew. But then, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes hardens into something sharper, a glint of youthful arrogance mixed with the instinct to fight his way out of a corner. He straightens his blazer, clears his throat, and leans closer to the microphone, determined to snatch back control of the room. A smirk tugs at the edges of his mouth as he tries to shift the tone, injecting humor into the tension like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. Michelle, he quips, voice pitched to carry across the hushed crowd, your viral videos belong on TikTok, not Congress. A ripple of laughter spills across the audience, but it's the uneasy kind, more like a nervous cough than genuine amusement. Several students exchange uncertain glances, unsure whether to chuckle or keep their phones rolling in case the next moment explodes. Even Michelle allows a faint, polite smile to ghost across her lips, though her eyes remain cool and watchful, studying Barron as though he's a law school exam question she's already solved. She doesn't interrupt, choosing instead to let the silence stretch, daring him to keep digging his own rhetorical grave. Barron, encouraged by the scattered laughter, seems to grow taller, rolling his shoulders back as if he's reclaiming his rhythm. He feeds off the moment, his confidence surging like a tide as he prepares for his next line. But instead of staying playful, his voice shifts, dropping into a lower, sharper register. His blue eyes narrow, locking onto Michelle with sudden intensity. But let's be honest, he continues, words slicing the air with surgical precision. Your radical agenda makes you dangerous to our democracy. The atmosphere in the hall changes instantly, as if someone has ripped the oxygen from the room. A chill sweeps through the rows of seats. Phones, previously held casually, jerk higher into the air as students and reporters alike realize this has just become something far more serious than a political sparring match. Dr. Grant's eyes widen, her fingers twitching nervously near the microphone, but she doesn't intervene, the weight of Barron's accusation sinking in like lead. A woman in the back row gasps audibly, while the murmurs from the crowd coalesce into a wave of sharp, anxious whispers. Did he just say dangerous? Someone hisses. He's going for blood now, comes another reply. Michelle's expression shifts so subtly that only the keenest observers might notice it. The gentle warmth drains from her features, leaving behind an unreadable mask of composure, her eyes two dark pools reflecting the glaring stage lights. She folds her hands neatly on the table, still as a statue, but there's an almost imperceptible tightening around her jaw, a quiet signal that the storm within her has begun to gather force. She doesn't speak yet, allowing Barron's words to echo off the walls, to hang in the charged silence like the threat of distant thunder. The voiceover returns, low and grave, underscoring the gravity of the moment. Barron Trump had just crossed an invisible line, transforming a heated debate into a personal battlefield. And in the stillness that followed, every person in that room felt it in their bones that something far bigger and far more dangerous was about to unfold. The hall feels as though it's shrunk, the air growing tighter with each passing second, as Barron's last words reverberate through the space. Michelle sits still, her eyes locked on him, and for an instant, she looks every bit the dignified, serene public figure the world knows her to be. But inside, her thoughts dance with quiet amusement and a glint of predatory satisfaction. Bless his heart. He has no idea what's coming. She lets the phrase roll around in her head, the way a cat might toy with a cornered mouse, feeling almost sorry for him in a distant, maternal sort of way. A tiny chuckle bubbles up in her chest, but she swallows it down, maintaining her carefully measured exterior. From her vantage point, she can see Barron's fingers tapping anxiously against the podium, his gaze darting from her to the restless audience, as though searching for an escape hatch. In the crowd, heads swivel back and forth, people whispering fiercely, as though caught between disbelief and hungry anticipation. Michelle takes a long, calm breath and leans forward slightly, just enough to close the distance between her and the microphone. Her voice, when it comes, is silky smooth, yet carries the weight of an approaching avalanche. "Before we continue," she says, eyes fixed on Barron as though she's peering directly into his soul, "I'd like this room to hear something." Her tone is so calm, so unfazed, that for a brief moment some in the audience actually think she might be about to play a highlight reel of her initiatives, or perhaps a video of children smiling from one of her literacy programs. But then she reaches into her burgundy blazer pocket and draws out her phone with a quiet, practiced motion, as precise as a surgeon lifting a scalpel. A collective murmur ripples through the room, the kind of low, electric buzz that signals something seismic is about to occur. Barron stiffens visibly, his eyes tracking every movement of her hands, a sheen of sweat reappearing on his brow, despite the icy blast of the auditorium's air conditioning. In the rows of seats, students lean forward, elbows on knees, phones raised higher, red recording lights blinking like tiny eyes in the dark. Even Dr. Grant's hand drifts toward her own microphone, as though she's unsure whether to intervene or simply surrender to the spectacle. The hush that descends is so absolute that the faint hum of stage lights becomes suddenly, startlingly loud, a high-pitched whine, underscoring the tension. Michelle lifts her phone high enough for the cameras to catch it, her thumb hovering millimeters above the screen. Her eyes never leave Barron's as she tilts her head, almost pityingly. "This," she murmurs, "is a recording from 3 weeks ago, and I believe it's very relevant to our discussion about fitness for political engagement." For a split second, there's only silence, deep, terrifying silence, before a collective gasp tears through the hall, as though 200 people have inhaled at once. Barron's mouth opens as if to protest, but no sound emerges. A bead of sweat trickles down his temple, glistening under the harsh glare of the stage lights. The voiceover returns in a whisper, tinged with awe and dread. And in that moment, Michelle Obama didn't just regain control of the debate, she set the stage for a revelation that would shake the entire hall and the future of American politics to its core. Michelle's finger hovers over the play button, the anticipation so thick it feels as though the entire room has forgotten how to breathe. The screen fades to black for a fraction of a second, leaving the audience dangling on the edge of an abyss, desperate to know what comes next. For one charged second, Michelle's thumb hovers over her phone screen while the audience collectively holds its breath, the silence so thick it feels almost alive. Then, with a calm flick of her finger, she taps play. Instantly, a voice booms through the auditorium speakers, unmistakably Barron's, crisp and resonant, but stripped of the polish he wears in public like a tailored suit. "Look," the recording begins, Barron's tone relaxed and almost conspiratorial. "I don't actually believe half the stuff I say in these debates." A strangled sound bursts from somewhere in the middle rows, half laugh, half gasp, as students twist in their seats to stare at Barron, eyes wide as saucers. A ripple of awkward laughter sputters through the hall, fragile and sharp, like dry leaves rustling in a sudden wind. One young man claps a hand over his mouth, whispering, "Oh my God," while his friend hisses, "Did he really just say that?" Barron stands frozen beside the podium, color draining from his face so fast it's as if the blood has been vacuumed from his veins. His towering frame seems to shrink by several inches as his shoulders hunch forward, and for the first time, the young man who commanded rooms with cool confidence looks startlingly young and exposed. On the speakers, his recorded voice continues, the words dropping like bombs in the silence. "These Georgetown kids eat up the constitutional law stuff, but it's just theater. Dad taught me. You say whatever gets you power, then you do whatever you want with it." A wave of murmurs sweeps through the crowd like the rush of a tide pulling back from shore, leaving behind raw disbelief and a charged, tingling quiet. A woman in the front row clasps her pearls, shaking her head slowly, as if trying to ward off a bad dream. Several phones, still recording, zoom in on Barron's stricken face, capturing every flicker of fear and confusion. The recording barrels on mercilessly. "Honestly, I think Dad went too far with a lot of stuff. The election fraud claims January 6th, that was a disaster, but I can't say that publicly. The base would destroy me, so I play the part, build my brand, and eventually I'll pivot to something more moderate when the time is right." There's a stunned hush, punctuated only by a few sharp inhales and the low buzz of phones receiving new live stream comments. The laughter from moments earlier dies utterly, replaced by the palpable weight of betrayal hanging over the room. The voice on the recording presses forward with a savage confession that slices to the core. "And these people I debate with, like Michelle Obama, she's actually pretty smart. Her positions aren't that radical if you really examine them. But calling her unfit and dangerous plays well with our crowd. It's all about the optics." Barron tries to swallow, Adam's apple bobbing visibly, but no words escape his lips. His chest rises and falls in quick, shallow breaths, eyes darting around as though searching desperately for an exit sign. Michelle sits motionless beside him, hands folded on the table, her expression unreadable except for the quiet fire blazing behind her eyes. When the recording clicks off with a soft digital chirp, a silence deeper than any that came before floods the room, pressing on the audience's ears like water at the bottom of the ocean. Slowly, Michelle leans into her microphone, her voice resonant yet soft as velvet, and says, "You admit you agree with me. You admit you lie for your brand. You admit your attacks are theater, not truth. So tell me, Barron, who's really unfit here?" Her words slice through the silence like a scalpel, each syllable deliberate, leaving nowhere for him to hide. A wave of quiet awe rolls through the auditorium as her gaze remains fixed on Barron, unwavering and almost sorrowful, as though she's disappointed rather than angry. The audience sits frozen, eyes flicking between Barron's ashen face and Michelle's righteous calm, everyone acutely aware that they've just witnessed a man's carefully constructed world collapse in real time. The voiceover returns, low and breathless, as if even it can barely comprehend what's just unfolded. In under 4 minutes, Michelle Obama didn't just win a debate. She tore away the mask, exposing the truth beneath. And Barron Trump, who'd never lost a debate in his life, stood there stripped of every illusion and every lie. In the hall, there's still no applause, no whispers, only the sound of 200 people holding their breath, suspended between the echo of secrets revealed and the shattering realization that nothing will ever be the same again. For a moment after Michelle's devastating question, the auditorium remains suspended in eerie silence, as if the world itself has stopped spinning. Then, all at once, it explodes into chaos. Students leap to their feet, phones thrust high, capturing every second from a dozen angles, while a flood of notifications pings and vibrates through pockets and backpacks. The air fills with overlapping voices shouting, "Oh my God, did you hear that?" And "Number Barron exposed. It's trending already." Someone near the back cries out, "I'm clipping this for TikTok," as the crowd surges forward, desperate to get closer. Dr. Ellen Grant, face pale and eyes wide, grabs her microphone and pleads, "Okay, everyone, let's remember this is an academic environment." but her voice is swallowed by the roar of excited chatter and the frantic click of smartphone cameras snapping photo after photo. A student wearing a Georgetown hoodie laughs breathlessly into his phone's camera, shouting, "My man just nuked his own career in front of 200 people." Barron stands frozen in the spotlight, his mouth working silently as if words might still come, but nothing emerges except the shallow sound of his own ragged breathing. His tall frame, which just moments ago seemed imposing and commanding, now appears fragile and diminished under the harsh glare of the stage lights. Each camera flash seems to stab at him, illuminating the sheen of sweat on his forehead, the trembling of his hands, and the haunted look behind his eyes. The same young man who had stormed into the debate hall with the swagger of a future political titan now looks in an instant like a lost teenager trapped in a nightmare he never saw coming. In the crowd, whispers carry like a rising tide, full of disbelief and a note of pity. "He looks like he's about to faint," someone murmurs, while another voice says, almost gently, "He's just a kid." Dr. Grant's voice finally cuts through the din, sharper now, tinged with desperation. "Everyone, please, sit down. This debate is not a circus." But it's too late. Reporters have muscled their way toward the stage, shoving microphones forward, shouting questions over one another. "Barron, do you stand by your comments?" "Michelle, did you know about this before tonight?" "Is this the end of Barron Trump's political career?" Flashbulbs strobe like lightning strikes, each burst freezing Barron's stricken expression in sharp relief. Michelle sits perfectly still, eyes lowered, hands calmly folded in her lap, the picture of composed dignity while the room convulses around her. At last, as though a silent signal has passed through him, Barron stirs. His eyes dart toward the side exit, a door marked with a discreet red exit sign glowing like salvation. Without a word, he gathers his notes with trembling fingers and pushes back his chair, its scrape against the stage floor, echoing like a gunshot through the chaos. Students gasp as he turns and strides away, his long legs carrying him across the stage with awkward haste, shoulders hunched, his once proud posture collapsing inward. For a fleeting moment, he pauses at the curtain's edge and glances back over his shoulder, eyes clouded and shining under the harsh lights. But then he disappears into the wings, swallowed by shadows, and leaving behind a stage that suddenly feels twice as large and echoingly empty. In the hall, the audience stands frozen, stunned by the sudden vacuum his absence creates. The towering giant they'd all come to witness had crumbled before their eyes, and now they stare at the empty podium where his future once seemed certain. A hush settles over the room once more, but this time it's tinged with sorrow and a lingering sense of disbelief. The voiceover returns, somber yet tinged with quiet empathy. In one unforgettable night, Barron Trump went from untouchable prodigy to a young man laid bare by his own words. And for the first time, the giant everyone feared seemed painfully, achingly small. As dawn breaks over Washington the next morning, the Georgetown auditorium feels a million miles away, yet the entire nation buzzes with the aftershocks of what happened there. On CNN, anchor desks gleam beneath studio lights as graphics spin across the screen, blaring "Barron Bombshell" in bold letters. One anchor can barely keep a straight face as he chuckles into the camera, shaking his head. "So, let me get this straight. Barron Trump called Michelle Obama unfit, while secretly agreeing with her on policy. That's like saying you hate kale, but living in a salad bar." Laughter ripples through the studio crew off camera, and the clip loops again and again, replaying the exact moment Michelle hit play on the recording. Meanwhile, social media explodes with memes, split screens of Barron solemnly declaring Michelle unfit, beside captions of his recorded voice praising her. Late-night comedians seize the moment, eager for fresh material. On one show, a host raises a mock glass and toasts, "To Barron, the first politician to self-destruct before he's even old enough to rent a car." Yet, as the laughter ricochets through liberal circles, another darker current runs beneath the headlines. Fox News, usually swift and sure in its defense of anything Trump, appears awkwardly divided. Their graphics are more muted, navy blues and soft reds, but the tension hums just below the surface. A tense split screen shows two hosts debating furiously, while the chyron at the bottom reads, "Shocking recording. Barron Trump admits political theater." One host leans forward, eyes blazing, and snaps, "This is a young man who was supposed to represent the future of the movement. We thought he was different." His co-anchor, trying to salvage the conversation, counters, "He's only 18. People say foolish things at that age. We shouldn't throw him away over one recording." But her voice quavers slightly, as though even she doesn't fully believe the words. Conservative commentators swarm radio shows and online panels, each trying to spin the story into something less catastrophic. Some argue it's all deep fake audio, while others blame liberal traps set by elite universities. But callers flood the phone lines, voices sharp with disappointment. "I used to think Barron was genuine," one man says, his voice thick with emotion. "But hearing him talk like that, it's just another politician playing us for fools." A woman calls in to a national show, furious and hurt. "We thought he was going to be different from his father's theatrics. Now it looks like he's just another actor on the stage." The words land like hammer blows, and for the first time, cracks appear in the ironclad loyalty that once shielded the Trump name. Meanwhile, Michelle Obama's name trends higher every hour. Clips of her poised, unwavering response rack up millions of views across platforms. On talk shows, political analysts describe her performance as the ultimate masterclass in political jujitsu, while others proclaim it the single most devastating live takedown in modern debate history. Donations pour into causes she supports, and public calls grow louder for her to take on an even bigger leadership role. Across social media, posts overflow with admiration. "She stayed calm while he melted down," one viral tweet reads, "and that's what real leadership looks like." The voiceover returns, low and steady, weaving humor with gravity. In just a few hours, a debate meant to inspire young voters became the fault line splitting political loyalties nationwide. And while comedians laughed, party strategists stared grimly into the same question: how does the movement survive when the next generation's brightest star reveals his entire act was just theater? As the news coverage rages on and social media continues to swirl with memes, debates, and viral clips, Michelle Obama finally steps in front of a camera, framed by soft studio lights that glow against the deep burgundy of her blazer. There's a quiet gravity to her presence, but also the sparkle of humor that has always been her trademark. She lets a small, knowing smile crease the corners of her eyes and begins, "You know, sometimes people say I'm intimidating." She pauses, glancing sideways at the interviewer as if sharing a private joke, then leans in just slightly, voice lowering in conspiratorial warmth. "But honestly, I'm just a tall black woman with receipts." The audience gathered, for the taping bursts into laughter, some clapping, some wiping tears of mirth from the corners of their eyes. Even the cameraman can't quite suppress a chuckle, the camera wobbling just enough to betray a human moment behind the lens. For a brief instant, the tension of the past few days seems to lift, carried away on waves of shared laughter. But as the chuckles subside, Michelle's expression grows more reflective, the humor giving way to something deeper and far more urgent. She looks directly into the camera, as though speaking to each viewer one-on-one, her eyes filled with both sorrow and determination. "The truth is, the real danger isn't just politicians who lie," she says quietly, her voice soft but edged with steel. "It's people who believe politics is just a game, a stage where you say whatever wins, you applause today, then pivot to something else tomorrow, depending on which way the wind blows." She pauses, allowing the words to sink in, while the studio holds its breath in reverent silence. Because when politics becomes performance, we lose sight of who we're supposed to be fighting for. We stop seeing people. We start seeing votes, followers, audiences. And that's how good people get hurt. That's how injustice grows. The camera slowly zooms closer, capturing every subtle nuance of her expression. The compassion, the exhaustion, the quiet fury that simmers just beneath her calm exterior. We're living in an era of racism, injustice, and media theater, she continues, voice firm. But moments like this, moments when truth cuts through the noise, remind us who we really are and who we need to be. Leaders who mean what they say, citizens who refuse to be manipulated, and a country that still believes integrity matters. Across living rooms and mobile screens nationwide, people lean forward, some nodding, others sitting motionless, transfixed by the weight and sincerity in her words. The voiceover returns, gentle yet brimming with conviction, weaving Michelle's message into a broader reflection. In an age of spin and spectacle, the showdown between Barron Trump and Michelle Obama was more than a viral moment. It was a rare glimpse into the fragile heart of democracy. It showed that sometimes the loudest voice isn't the most honest one, and that real power belongs to those brave enough to tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Michelle offers one last soft smile, her eyes glimmering with a mix of weariness and hope. "Don't let anyone convince you that the truth doesn't matter," she says, "because it does. It always does." And as she falls silent, the audience sits hushed, their applause beginning not as a roar, but as a gentle swell of gratitude, as though they're thanking her not just for winning a debate, but for reminding them that even in the darkest moments, honesty and courage still shine. As the days turn into weeks after that unforgettable night, the shockwaves from the Georgetown debate continue rippling across the country. News outlets keep rolling the same electrifying clip of Michelle pressing play on her phone, her calm voice echoing through television speakers and mobile screens nationwide. Meanwhile, Michelle's social media explodes in a way even she hadn't imagined. Her follower count surges by hundreds of thousands. Her inbox floods with invitations to speak at events, and hashtags like "Nar Receipts" and "Respect" and "Michelle McDrop" trend for days. A meme circulates showing Michelle with sunglasses and the caption, "Don't come for me unless I send for you." Even late-night comedians joke that the Secret Service should start screening her phone for weapons, because apparently it's a national security threat all by itself. Barron Trump, on the other hand, all but vanishes from public view. A few tabloid photographers catch glimpses of him wandering through Georgetown's campus, hood pulled low over his eyes, avoiding questions. Rumors swirl that he's taking a gap year, though some speculate it might be less of a year off and more of a strategic retreat. One satirical blog quips, "Barron's pivoting to a new major, advanced crisis management." In political circles, some whisper that he might try a comeback someday, but others say the Georgetown debacle will haunt him for years to come, a cautionary tale of how fast a star can fall in the age of viral truth. Yet amid all the chaos and commentary, something more profound lingers in the national conversation. The voiceover returns one last time, calm and resolute, carrying the weight of everything that's come before. It took just 18 minutes to expose the difference between real leadership and political theater. And in those 18 minutes, the country saw that towering height, famous names, and clever sound bites mean nothing without honesty, courage, and conviction. The narration grows quieter, more intimate, as though confiding directly in the audience. Because in America, truth may bend under pressure, but it never breaks. And sometimes it only takes one person, standing calm in the storm, armed with nothing but facts and quiet strength, to remind us all of who we are meant to be. Standing outside beneath a bright sky, wind ruffling the edges of her blazer as she looks into the distance, her eyes glinting with hope and determination. She smiles softly, a look that carries both the scars of old battles and the quiet confidence of someone ready for whatever comes next. The screen fades slowly to black, and over the gentle swell of music, a final message appears in elegant text. In the end, truth speaks louder than any stage. The characters Michelle Obama and Barron Trump, as portrayed in this story, are fictional and do not represent real people in real life. This story is a work of creative fiction and is not intended to depict actual events or statements made by any real individuals. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more powerful tales where truth triumphs over lies, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Your support helps me keep creating stories that inspire, challenge, and entertain. Thank you for watching.